Alrighty. Welcome everyone. Just going to do a quick audio test here. Hopefully you guys can hear me. And there'll be some shooting in the background. Hopefully the levels are pretty balanced. Just like before, if you've watched one of these, so I'll go through each stage, talk through sort of what I have to say, and then pause at the end of each stage. Answer any questions. I won't have the questions open as I'm talking, but I'll check them at the end of each stage. And at the very end, we'll do general questions about the match or anything else, or training leading up to it, or anything like that. We'll do sort of general Q&A. I'm happy to stick around as long as I can be of help and answer some questions, and then we'll wrap it up. And again, if if there are any audio issues, video laggy, or anything like that, just let me know in the chat, and I'll try and fix it. This is a one-man operation. I know a lot of streaming folks have a producer or something, but it's just me. So, this match was about 3 weeks ago now. This was the North Carolina State Championship, the Carolina Classic for 2020. This was at the Rowan County Wildlife Club, which has hosted this match before, but it had been a couple of years. As I do every year, certainly since, I think every year since 2013. I've worked the state match, and it's always been something I try and just participate in and give back to and be a part of, just because actually there are a couple of years in there. Sorry, I'm realizing there are a couple of years. I don't know, I'm trying to remember exactly. I may have missed a couple of years, but 2013, 2014, 2015, any year that it's been at Sir Walter, I've worked it. And I also worked it this year at Rowan. A lot of people ask, don't you want to win your state match? Yes, I do. But at the same time, I really, it's important to me that the North Carolina State match sort of sets the standard. Even if we have gripes about other matches, that North Carolina, we do it the best we can, and we make it the best match that we can for the people that pay their money and travel to shoot it. So this is me shooting on staff day. As with any match, that's always going to be a performance penalty. I don't think it hurt me too bad once I got kind of my head put on straight. So the first couple of stages, I really was not focusing enough on the shooting, so I was trying to keep the squad moving, trying to just generally doing more stuff. And after the third stage, which we'll see, after the third stage, I kind of dialed back on that, let the squad handle a little bit more, and my shooting markedly picked up. So let's kick it off with stage one here. And now, again, one of these things that just kind of plays into it. So I got mixed up somehow, and I was in a rush. I was a second shooter on this stage, and my just didn't start my hat cam recording. And when I realized that was just kind of one of those moments where it was a little bit frustrating. But there were so many things going on. We were trying to get the match ready to go, and then you step up and it's time to start shooting. Now, luckily this was a fairly straightforward stage. I think it's 18 rounds total, 8 on each side, and then the two poppers in the middle. And I do wish I had the first person video for this one, because it was actually a really quite good stage, and it in the options that it allowed, just in the sense that basically every target was available in a couple of different spots. So in particular, these close no-shoot targets with the partial no-shoot targets, where you could get sort of close up to the port and try and set up wide and shoot them, or you could take them from the back of the box in the corner. And I took a plan that I was fairly happy with, but it was certainly interesting to see some of the open shooters basically just set up real wide and almost shoot the entire thing from the middle, because you could also these outside targets. I promise I'll play the video in just a second. But these outside targets, I can't get a good shot of them. The outside targets that are below the barrel, I believe those guys took headshots on them just over the top of the barrel from the middle, which If you're shooting open, it was like a 7-yard head box. You can just eat the Charlies and power through. So, yeah, so this is stage 1. Started on the box, so you can't really see it, but you have to take a bit of a step down. And this is totally a mirror of the right side. So we've got this kind of double stack, medium distance target, and then the target with the no shoot through the port. And so basically I chose to take the steel from the middle and then slice it up into 2 back corner positions of 8. And I knew going into that this left position I would be shooting to 10, and they're just, it was an 18-round stage. So unless you can find a way to slice it into 9 and 9 with 11 in the gun to start, you're basically going to have one or the other magazine is going to be shooting to 10, unless you want to do some kind of, do 2 reloads on an 18-round stage, which I ideally did not want to do. And so, what you can see here, this is sort of a danger. So I had 1 makeup shot, but I just took it on that steel popper. So I have to go 1 for 1 at this point. And then I come up to here, and you can actually see the target move just a smidge. I don't know if it really comes through. But the first shot, you can actually see the target kind of bounces back and forth a little bit, because I basically, as I'm transitioning on, I broke the shot as soon as my sight was on the cardboard, which is unfortunately in the Delta. So I fired another makeup shot there, and already my brain was telling me, okay, you're going to run out of rounds, just reload and move on. So I try and do the reload. Unfortunately, I fumble it a little bit. Now, it is my habit, and maybe this is one of those train like you fight kind of moments. It is my habit that in club matches in particular, if there is going to be, if I make a mistake, I want to fix it. I don't want to try and game the system and take a mic or just, go past a target or do something like that. I want to make up the shots, get all the alphas if I can. Now, doing the math on this, that definitely did not help me here. Just a little quick practice score what if. It looked like even just taking that mic, if it had saved me a second, would have brought my hit factor from about a 5.1 to a 5.5. So I wouldn't have won the stage either way. It's a bad situation any way you slice it. In theory, you could say probably the best, if you could game it out, the best thing to do would have been actually just to take the Delta, and then just not have the standing reload or the mic. But obviously a Delta could as easily be a miss. I didn't see the target move when I was shooting. I just called that the shot was very early coming onto that target, and I fired that makeup shot without really thinking about it. I mean, and you can see I don't even leave the target. I just shoot 3 on it by the time I get there. So it's not like I was like 1, 2, oh, that felt bad, let me come back. As soon as it went off, I knew I needed to shoot another one. So I was in the zone, I was calling the shots. It just, in that scenario, there was nothing I could do. And so I sort of made one of 2 bad choices, which was to do that standing reload. Like I say, this being, a level 2 match, if I'm just trying to optimize not for sort of correct technique, but for getting the best score, the right thing to do would have been to move and leave that mic. But in my mind, I was really trying to collect the alphas, and so I stood there and did the reload. Like I said, wasn't going to be a great stage either way you slice it, but overall I was fairly happy with how everything else went. It was just that one kind of frustrating moment where it doesn't show up on the scorecard as a miss, but it was obviously not a great stage for me. So 78%. Not a good start. I obviously didn't know that yet, but I had a sense that time was not going to be competitive. The hits were okay. 6 Charlies on an 18-round stage is a little high, even with those level of partials. But yeah, I knew it wasn't a great stage coming out of the gate. But the actual stage execution, I went to all the spots in all the right order and shot the right targets. There wasn't a lot of back and forth hesitation, so I was fairly happy with that. Any questions about this one? not too much really to say. Like I said, this actually turned out, it looks like a very plain stage, just 2 barrel stacks and a wall section with a port in the middle. But I thought it actually, this turned out to be a very well crafted stage, you could say, in the sense that there was not one obvious right way to do it. The targets were just spread wide enough that it wasn't obvious which way, whether you wanted to get up close to the port, which of course you couldn't really do because the table was there. And the targets were not super far away, but the partials made them really reward accuracy, especially in minor. So I thought this was actually a very good stage in the match. But yeah, it was just not a great start for me. All right, so I include a little bit of hat cam footage here, but on the second stage, hat cam falls off, which you'll actually see if you watch it in the third person video. You'll see it fall off, and I was kind of vaguely aware of it, but I really just tried to put it out of my mind and keep shooting, and that actually went okay. I did have the. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm seeing a question coming back on stage 1. Would it be possible to do it in 2 positions? Not really. Basically, just because you had to. I mean, you had to move through the middle somewhat to be able to see these outside no-shoot targets through the port. And so some of the open folks kind of took one very wide position in the middle. But with the poppers being straight down the middle and then wanting to go for the body shots, basically if you wanted to get the bodies available on these lower targets, again, sorry, I cannot get a good picture of what I'm talking about here, but these lower targets, I really wanted, I didn't particularly want to go for alphas on them, and the idea was I was going to be doing a reload moving across. With a stage like this where it's such a small shooting area, number of positions doesn't necessarily save. Cutting a position, it's not like you're moving very far anyway. It's much more about, can you be shooting the whole time? So for example, that was one of the things I was happy with, was basically going straight from the steel to turning and shooting those targets coming in. Not that it's a long move, but that I was basically aiming at those targets the whole time. And if I had, shot this and was doing the reload on the move, then I would basically be doing the reload here and then have the gun up and basically be shooting those targets coming into position. But yeah, basically if you wanted to get the bodies on the lower targets, you had to go to the back corners. Would it have been better to start on the left than come into the center? No, I chose not to, for the reason that, like I said, I wanted to sort of shoot my way in. I wanted to shoot my way into the left and the right positions. And so if I sort of picked up the gun and immediately went all the way to the left, I would have had to come back for those poppers. And in my mind, if I'm already looking at a target, I don't want to move away and have to come back to it. If I can sort of look at it, pick up the gun, and shoot it before I leave, that's just sort of a personal preference thing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would be very curious to run this stage about 3 different ways. I think all the plans would be within 3% of each other. I don't think that this was a stage that particularly you won or lost on plan. I think it was, especially in production, or single stack minor. This was going to be a stage that's won and lost on execution, just because you don't have very many rounds. Even in limited, it's an 18 rounder. Most limited guns, you top off at the reload, or at the make ready. I think you've got 21 rounds in there, maybe 22 if you got some super high speed magazines. And so, not shooting a lot of makeup shots and going 1 for 1 and sort of being tight on rounds was really the name of the game with this stage. It was about discipline more than about planning necessarily. And so, yeah, I mean, going left, middle, right probably would have been about the same. It was just about whether or not you, on the particularly on the magazine of 10, where you only had the one makeup shot, could you get it done with no makeups? And that's just where I spun out. But again, a great stage, a good test of skill. I don't usually look at stage wins, but if I pull up my practice score competitor here, this was, so I shot it in 15:14. The guy who won it shot it in 13:29. I mean, it's interesting. You'll actually see the guys who win, especially medium and short stages like this. Sometimes they'll just, completely smash it out of the park. But they, sometimes they have a trouble keeping consistent across the match. And so I wasn't, especially for the first stage of the day, I wasn't really trying to go hard on this one. But it just, would have been better just to get them all on the paper. Well, I guess, the delta was on the paper, but not have to do that standing reload. Okay. So stage 2, like I was saying, lost the camera, tried to mostly put it out of my head. Again, I thought this was a pretty good stage. I believe I was up first on this one. I think we had somebody else in the order who was before me. And we were rotating one. And so I was first on this one, and this one kind of annoyed me. I was rushed by being first, and then I forgot to turn on my camera. And this is all stuff that's in my control. This isn't meant to be sort of making excuses. But this one, obviously I had a mic, and I didn't take the time to make sure I had a good grip on the gun after the reload into this third position. But anywho, so you basically back up. There goes the camera. And then from here you had 7 rounds. I was really happy with this plan, especially, it wasn't a super big shooting area, but being able to kind of shoot into position each time. So coming across, basically, this was actually a really interesting stage where, you had the start position, and you were basically about even. You maybe were 6 inches ahead of, downrange of this port. And it was very tempting. A lot of people ended up doing a lot of extra movement because they moved straight towards that port, because they were thinking, okay, I'm going to go to this port and I'm going to shoot the targets through it. And I'm not sure how much it shows up on video, but in the way I visualized this movement was stepping back into the right, like 5 o'clock. If 12 o'clock is right in front of me, back into the right, because that actually got me a view of these targets without having to move very far. It's basically one step straight back. But it's sort of counterintuitive in that way, because people want to, you think, oh, I need to go to that port and shoot it. And it doesn't, it's not like that. Especially the way this was set up. The targets in the diagram, they were next to each other. So it probably would have been the same idea. But because they were vertically stacked, it was that much easier to sort of frame them in that port just by stepping straight back. And then, again, not having the first person video, but you can kind of see, let's not go all the way down, but you can sort of see pivot over, and immediately I've got targets to start shooting. And that was the plan, is actually shoot those going in, because you had 4 rounds on that back right, 8 rounds on this, through this sort of left opening, and then 3 rounds on the front left. And so I looked at it and I said, well, I don't want to shoot to 11 here, so I'm going to shoot 4 coming in. That'll be 8 in the first mag, and then 7. And so it's a bit of a standing reload, but it was just the way it was. The way the targets were available from, pretty much anywhere in the shooting area, you could see something. These ports, I think people tend to, especially stage designers, tend to like very narrow ports, because it feels like you can make the stage very precise. But I actually really liked these ports, especially the way the targets were spaced, because it did give you the option, from almost anywhere you could get a full presentation on a target. You didn't really have to get up too close to them, and so it gave you a lot of, as a design, it gave you a lot of choice to basically make the shots as hard as you wanted, because you didn't have to jam your gun through the port to see everything. You could actually shoot a lot of targets from further back, sort of throughout the stage. So yeah, on the whole, I was actually happy with this stage. It was just that mic that was in the again, you can't really see it. This is why I normally get the first person video. So there was the third target in this array over the side here was a diagonal hardcover on the other side, low left, and I was just jamming on the trigger so hard, just trying to rail fast splits on these close targets that I just dropped. I mean, it was like 3 inches into the hardcover. It was not even close. Again, just trying to run too fast and sort of execute. Sort of outran my grip, you could say. But so that was, obviously anytime you have a mic on the stage, that was definitely a wake up call for me, because it was a mic on an easy target. There was no reason to give up those points. And that was sort of where I was starting to think, like, man, this match is not going so well for me. I gotta turn this around. But then on the next stage, I was up last, and so I ended up taking the timer for a while. And when it came time to shoot, I sort of had visualized the rest of the stage, but I just didn't have this order quite visualized down. Oops. Jump back a little further than I was expecting. Actually, before I move on, any questions on this one? You guys can also put them in the chat, as during the video, and I'll sort of collect them at the end and run through them before I move on. And something else to notice here, I do kind of sit on my sight picture on this popper a little bit, and that's sort of a theme. I was starting to have a lot of, pushing speed. I was definitely starting to have my recurrent issues with steel, pulling off steel too early, sort of. I describe it as I see the sight picture, and it's like my brain sends the order to my trigger finger to shoot and my arms to transition to the next target at the same time. And the arms win, so the gun starts coming off. And so I kind of was being a little bit more deliberate about sort of settling the sight picture on steel and shooting it before, moving on and trying to rush through and not sort of shoot it on the streak, but actually let the sight settle on it a little bit, just with these mini poppers. And you'll see that there are a couple other times in the match where I probably settle on steel a little bit too much, but I really, I just did not want to go to war with any steel, and so I was sort of confirming my sight picture perhaps a little too much, but that's one of those things that I will never beat myself up too bad about, just because you never want to be dealing with the popper dance and trying to leave and come back, and especially in production being pressed for rounds. All right, so stage 3. Just preview this a little bit. So basically, there were two poppers off the draw. This right popper activates the swinger behind these barrels, and then this popper actually activates the swinger that we'll see at the end. And the order that I was supposed to shoot, I believe, was popper, swinger, static. But I just didn't visualize it nearly enough, just because I was running the timer. And again, not sort of taking the time to sort of put in the work as a competitor that I should have. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So much disorganization. And here again, just talking about the stage. This was I think an excellent stage in the sense that, this first sequence was a little bit of a, you had to pick your order. But then up here, the port meant you had to go pretty much to the end of the shooting area. You had to shoot these targets along the way, and then you had to shoot the swinger somewhere in the middle. And so it really rewarded, being able to sort of be ready for the swinger when it came, but also, taking the targets on the move without, setting up too hard in any one position. But in general, the whole thing just came apart here where, so you can see I shoot the popper, go this to half speed. I shoot the first activator popper, and then I transition the gun to wait for the swinger, and then I realize, I actually need to be shooting the other popper. Yeah. I'm like, let me shoot the other popper, miss. okay, let's get back on the plan. Swinger. Like this is a fourth shot I've taken at this popper now. And then I take one on the swinger because I called not great hits. So, yeah, I mean, not that we really need to dissect this mistake here. Ultimately, you know, the diagnosis was just lack of visualization. That should have been a very straightforward mover sequence, and I didn't give it the time that it deserved. And so that too, again, you know, no scored error here. This was not a great time. Like if I look at, so this stage, yeah, in production, yeah, so I shot it in 1094. Stage winner Brian Giovannini shot it in 849, so he basically got me by a second and a half and won Charlie. And a second and a half is an eternity on a 10-second stage. That's 15. That's 15% of the stage time, and so obviously that's a 15% better score. Yeah, so that was just that, but that was kind of my wake up call, you know. So after that, I was like, I gotta really, I gotta shoot this the way I should have been shooting it since the beginning, and actually focus and visualize, especially on the longer stages. I think starting on these three top of the hill stages that were in theory short and simple. It's just a classic rookie mistake. You know, everybody makes it, and especially when you're trying to make sure the match is running and your squad's running well. So that brought us to this stage, which is, I believe, 32 rounds. It's definitely a long course of some kind. Yeah, 32 rounds. And I knew that I needed to get the visualization for this one right, and I did, and picked up a stage win. Not that stage wins are everything, but it was sort of a good. I knew coming off of it, like, okay, yeah, that was a better run. Shoot like that the rest of the day. And I'm really trying to sort of, after this first section, where obviously I'm shooting a lot flat-footed, the goal is to kind of try and stay on the move, not set up too hard, and sort of move through the stage and keep the gun running and loaded, going position to position. And yeah, that little reaction at the end is I'm realizing I just shot 3 alphas. I called one bad, and so I shot 3 on it, and it was 3 alphas. As far as stage strategy goes on this one, the main, there were a couple of choices. The main one was where to take this middle zebra target from. And the thing that I liked about the plan that I ended up coming up with is I don't think I ended up shooting to 10 anywhere, and it was very easy to shoot to 10 on this stage. So for example, it was, some folks ran a plan where they came up to here and they shot the tuxedo, and then this slash hardcover, and then these 3 back here shooting to 10 with a lot of hardcover in the mix. Then they would sort of go to the outside. As it was, I ended up shooting, so let's see, it ended up being 8, 8, 4, 8, and 4. So could I have tried to change things to cut out, one of those reloads, given that I'm shooting 4 and 4? Yes, in theory, you could come up with some kind of crazy plan like that, but just looking at it, it didn't make any sense. You had a little bit of time to do the reloads, and so I was just like, even, the one that I was least happy about is this one up here, because you're loading out of your, 4th pouch or whatever. Oops, skip too far forward. It wasn't a super long move, but even there, you can see I've only got 2 mags left on my belt, but that's why I run 5 pouches, is for a stage like this. If you have to do that reload, and then, if you fumble one somewhere along the way, you've got even a spare backup. So even the fact that I never went to that 5th pouch, it's just there as insurance. I can't remember the last time I actually used it in a match. But it's there. If I'd fumbled a mag during a reload on this stage, I could have just kept going. even going to the fourth pouch is pretty unusual. In most 32 rounders, if you can break it down into 4/8, then you're not even going to touch your fourth pouch. But sometimes you see a stage like this where it just works out better to be able to do that fourth reload, and I was just able to do that. There were a couple of other interesting stage plans. I saw at least one other shooter. You could come to, I don't know if I can really show it. Basically, yeah, you could come to here and you could see this slash hardcover, and basically if you stood right at that front fault line, you could see the tuxedo and then the two slash hardcovers kind of from the middle, from one position. So some folks decided to chop it up that way. I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to run it the other ways. I do feel like I like my plan. It was sort of the most repeatable. I wouldn't choose to run any different plan. I don't know that I necessarily had the advantage on plan. But really, the emphasis for this on me was this tuxedo target. It was, you draw on the steel targets. If you miss them, you'll know it. And then the other outside targets, they're open paper. Call the shots. If it's a Delta or a Mike, make it up. But it was a sort of middle distance tuxedo that I really did not. I was making the shot harder on myself to cut a position, and so I really wanted to settle the gun and make sure I got the alphas there. The other thing, if you watch my feet when I step in, I sort of try and set up with a bias to the right, and then sort of shift. So this is almost like 3 little mini positions as I sort of pivot around. But yeah, I really wanted to be squared up to that tuxedo target so that I had the best chance of getting 2 alphas without going to war with it, and just move on. And then, yeah, move hard. You could see the target from further back, but I was like, get up to the fault line, just shoot it, and then transition straight on that into that next array. It's very tempting to sort of shoot targets as soon as the gun's loaded and they're visible to you, but in this case it wouldn't have saved time in that sense, because you had to get to that front right corner or front left corner in this scenario anyway. And one last thing I'll show, but I'll make the call. Any questions here before we move on? Slow this one down to half speed. So, not rocket science, but just another example of sort of implementing the technique. I sort of, you can see I've got the gun up as I'm putting this left foot just inside the fault line. That's very conscious. I'm thinking, okay, as soon as that foot's down, I can start shooting. As soon as I lift that back foot, I guess you could say. And so I wasn't just running to the general area. It was, as soon as that back foot comes up, start shooting, and don't post up, but just roll through that position. But get that foot inside the fault line and then move on. All right, so yeah, so that stage went pretty well. This one, yeah, this stage, well, I mean, so I designed this stage. I liked it quite a lot. Yeah, sat on that sight picture for the popper, but I really wanted to get it in one. I didn't want to be trying to pull off it. Shoot to 10 there. Shoot to 9 at the end there. And the goal here, yeah, just like in that on stage 2. Well, I didn't finish shooting. The idea was, coming into each position, I had the target that I wanted to be shooting, and I wanted to be lined up to start shooting it early. So coming into this position, obviously I'm going to take this close guy, but you can see my gun comes straight up to it before I'm even settled, and then I'm pivoting straight to this guy. That was part of the reason I chose this plan. Is yes, there were sort of two positions here. One here shooting those 3 targets, and then sort of coming to the end here to shoot that partial. But the idea was the whole time it's basically one long blended position, because the whole time you're moving, you can be shooting this open target that you're moving straight towards, which is always the easiest type of shooting on the move, right? When your hips are facing straight at the target. And so I just kind of shoot him on the move, and then coming into this last position, kind of swinging wide, so that I can come in and be able to shoot this target again as I'm coming in, and then transition to this near one, and then shoot the rest across. Would it have been simpler to just run to this position and shoot right to left? Yes. But again, one of the things I was trying to do in my stage plans here was just shoot as soon as I could. Shoot coming in or leaving positions as often as possible. Not necessarily shooting at a full move, but trying to shoot coming in and going out. And so if I could set up things in a way where, as soon as the reload was done, I had at least a viable target coming in, while I was slowing down to shoot, and then just call those shots and settle in, and then shoot the rest of the targets in that position. There again, I really, there was a sort of a lone popper. I really did not want to over transition on it. That's what I tend to do, is sort of push past, and then, so in this scenario, it would have been shooting just to the left of the popper. So I just let my sights settle and really go 1 for 1 there. Now, on the whole, the main thing that I would say probably, could have, the place where I would say could have been better was obviously the points. So, 7 Charlies on a what was this, 26 round stage. It's it's just a little too much. It would have been nice to dial back 1 or 2 of those Charlies. But I think I was fairly happy with the result overall. And again, coming off the first 3, this was a good sort of reset, and saying like, this is, visualize, get all the details in, be ready to shoot targets early, have your sequences right. So this is a good comeback. Beaker's asking, do you have any thoughts about forward falling steel versus rearward falling? Not really in sort of approach to how you shoot them necessarily. Forward fallers, you want to call your shots just because it's even, they fall even slower. So if you're waiting to see the targets fall, then you're going to be waiting that much longer. Whereas if you call a good shot and move on, you don't have to wait as much for that. But no, I mean, for the most part, steel targets are steel targets. I will say this is probably more interesting to know. So these poppers, and I know this because at least on this stage, so this is the stage I ended up working as well. So these are the kind of 2-piece poppers where the top is separate from the base. So I guess, in some sense they're, I don't know, I guess they ended up falling forward, but they weren't hinged. They weren't hinged forward fallers the way that, say, these poppers at the top of the hill were. So you can, I don't know if you can really see it, but the bolts at the bottom, these felt like they took forever to fall over, and people commented about that. It's like, oh, you don't know if you hit the target, and it takes forever to see it. But this is something, it's worth knowing. Anywhere that uses these poppers, obviously, well, not obviously, but you can see they're the same here. It's this sort of 2-piece design, although these are set to fall backwards. Any kind of 2-piece popper like that doesn't have a hinge on it, you can hit pretty much anywhere, and it'll go down. You probably still want to be shooting for the calibration zone, just because it is the sort of widest, target area. But you'd be amazed. Even shooting soft 9mm, you can hit some of these targets 2 or 3 inches above the base, and they'll still go down, just because there's no sort of hinge to sort of absorb the left to right motion. So even if you hit it very low and it just kind of pivots the target off, it'll still often be enough just to tip it over and have it fall. So that's a sort of useful thing to know, I guess. You can be a lot more aggressive on poppers like that. The hinged poppers, you know, generally speaking, you're going to have more calibration issues, which is part of the reason people like these two-piece poppers. They're basically impossible to shoot and not fall with 125 power factor 9mm. They usually go over. You know, this is anecdote, but we had 2 of those on our stage, and we didn't have any calibration calls at all. None that were even close. You know, the pop, if they even had a partial hit on the popper, it went down. So yeah, that's good to know. You can hit those high or low, and they'll go down. All right. Yeah, I mean, other than that, you know, you could. This was sort of the one regret I came to understand. I did not see this little sliver of the target from the front as being a worthwhile proposition. In the original design, that was not supposed to be there. We didn't notice it until I didn't notice it until we got to the stage and started walking it. And of course, by then it was too late to change it. I even seeing that, and you know, with production round counts being what they are, I don't think I would have taken a different plan. Running this stage, you know, as an RO, we saw a lot of high cap shooters just come up to the front and just shoot 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So, you know, that was just kind of a, you know, a little bit of a disappointment in that, you know, if you're willing to just eat Charlies and Deltas, then you know, you just kind of run up to the front of the stage and hose half of it from there. But I mean, I can't fault them for taking that option. But I will say that the barrel did end up, I mean, it caught more people than I think were expecting it. But you know, the good shooters who kept off it and really called those shots and used that ability to sort of save them going to that front position. You know, I think it worked out for them, but it, you know, was a little bit of a disappointment just from a stage design perspective, that sort of there wasn't that need to take those targets from here where you had to take this target in particular where you had the full presentation. And then I guess, yeah, one other thing is I deliberately sort of stepped in, kind of like stage 2 where I sort of stepped back but didn't sort of move through. A lot of people sort of moved into the position to see this up close target and didn't stop, right? I knew, okay, take one step in, but don't keep moving towards the target. Just kind of pause on that one leg and just shoot the target and then move, you know, and then move over to the rest of the stage. That was an easy way for people to burn a lot of extra energy going, you know, moving towards that target when all you needed was to basically just step in with 1 foot and it was available. Nice use of the zoom lens. All right. So this was another stage that I was fairly happy with. Really settled the sights on that one. Shot this one all A's, which I can't remember the last time that happened in a stage. I heard or called or something. I knew I'd hit the barrel with that shot, so I made it up. Just the way this whole thing is set up, you know, given kind of what I was saying about shooting coming in and going out, there really was no room for that on this stage, just because these outside targets, you know, being tuxedos, I did not want to risk dropping a mic on them while moving backwards, you know, and so basically for the entire rest of the stage, this target was actually pretty much the only one you could take somewhat on the move, and you know, a little bit of the middle section, you know, keeping a little bit of momentum through, but this was very much sort of go to the spot, shoot the targets you can see from each one. Yeah, I mean, you can see that was narrow enough. It wasn't really worth carrying anything through. And, you know, some people kind of tried to come in on this target and then pivot to the close one. And I thought, no, like, don't try and do that. Just go far enough until you've got a full presentation on the open target, shoot him, and then set up with, you know, however far that takes you. And then just get 2 alphas on the middle guy there. Why popper from the left rather than the center? In my ideal scenario, I wanted to be sort of carrying more speed through the middle and just focused on these closer targets. And so it just seemed, take it from that position where, because I was backing up, I wasn't really going to be moving through that position. I definitely knew this back right position, you could say. To some degree, I was wanting to, carry some speed through this target. Now, obviously, you have the reload bobble there, but it definitely didn't post up for that target. And the idea was that I wouldn't do it in the middle either. And so basically, I would run back to this corner, do the reload, post up, get the steal, take that paper, and then move through the middle. But you can see I'm pretty static there, so I could have taken it from the middle too. It kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another in that sense, because it was even in the same magazine. But I just knew I didn't want to take it from the right, where I was going to try and carry some momentum through that open paper. Not that it was a lot, but yeah, I think you could kind of take it pretty much from anywhere. I think I think all the options were viable and not significantly different. Any other questions on stage 6 here? Again, so I went from, so stage 1, 78%, 80%, 75% on stage 3. Yeah, so the key to winning a match is not necessarily winning stages, but cranking out, solid 90% runs and just getting a good fraction of the stage points on each stage. So stage win, 94. 90, where is it? Yeah, stage 6, 91%. So, it doesn't actually, I put the sort of 7th, the ranking in production here, but obviously that doesn't actually matter score-wise. What matters is your fraction of the stage winner, because that determines your fraction of the stage points that you get for the match. I do find it interesting sometimes just to see what the dispersion is. So, for example, I think on a stage like this, you could come up with some kind of formula to see that because the nature of it basically meant you had to go to all the spots. Everybody has roughly the same foot speed. You're just not going to see that much of a dispersion in all the shooters. And so, you might look at a stage like, stage 5. Maybe that's a bad example. If we look at, so like if we look at stage 5, so yeah, third place was 82%, fourth place was 82%, fifth place was 79%. So it was a much wider spread in production, where on stage 6, I took 7th, but I was still 91%. So you had the stage winner, you had second at 99%, 97%, 93, 91, 91, 90, 89, 88. So everybody was kind of bunched up. On a stage like this, if you're looking at it, sort of thinking through strategy, this is not a stage where you're really going to be able to get an edge over anybody, really. I mean, just because you're so constrained in the shooting. There really isn't that much of an option to really shoot on the move or do anything fancy or, save a step anywhere, save a position. And so stages like this really do, it really is just about executing without mistakes. And so, even something as simple as this was probably the stage where I aimed the longest at any given popper. But even there, I was looking at the sights and I was really letting them settle. And that's just, I just really wanted to get it on the first shot and move on. And I did, and you can see it was even like falling as I was leaving position. I didn't want to deal with it. I just wanted to have it gone. So pretty happy with the execution. Obviously, a couple makeup shots here and there that on a stage like this, every makeup shot is basically a Charlie, just in terms of raw time. So, yes, it was 16 alphas, but I had to shoot 2 or 3 makeup shots. So, you can kind of judge that however you will. But again, generally speaking, visualizing my orders, hitting targets in exactly the order I want them to, hitting, going to the spots where I want to, stages, things are really starting to come together for me. I'm feeling like this, much happier with these with these stages, and so I feel like I'm picking up a little momentum. Yeah, this is a fun one. This is what settles for a hoser stage in North Carolina. I'll come back to that. Yeah. So yeah, what I was just hesitating there. So that was really the one flub of this stage was the plan was gun goes straight to the next target and you actually shoot them going in. And you can see, oh, my feet are moving. I'm in production. I should be reloading. No, wrong. The gun, let's see. The gun should have gone straight to that outside target and, been shooting him coming in and going across. Again, on this stage, I was kind of trying to take this approach of, okay, from at the start, you can't really see anything coming in. But once you see him, you have something in front of you at all times that you can be shooting, even as you're moving. So I'm easing out of that position, shooting here, but I'm also staying close to the barrels, and it let me stay back. And so I didn't have to sort of go forward into that front right corner by indexing straight from the window into that target tucked away all the way on the right. I was basically able to just shoot this whole thing as one long position moving through on the way to the next position, which again, it was a reload into sort of a blind position. I couldn't really see anything coming in, which is fine. There was, basically enough time to do the reload and have the gun up. But yeah, that cost me, half a second, whatever, but little details. Yeah, other than that, so I mean, the stage was definitely interesting in the sense that of these 4 targets at the front, you could basically see 3 of them from either of these 2 positions, and so there were a fair number of options in the sense of, yeah, you can see 1, 2, 3. As you see with round count, I basically just chose to shoot 10 and 10, and it was nice to sort of be able to choose how to slice up that array for that reason. I contemplated, another plan where you go straight to the window and you shoot 3, and then you go to the back left corner and you shoot the 2 around the corner and then the 2 remaining through the port, but then you basically had to backtrack up to this front right corner. And so even though this stage plan resulted in, what felt like a long time until the first shot, once you start shooting, it's basically, a steady stream of targets as you move through. Obviously, a little pause to hit the button, but you can imagine shooting in, say, open or any kind of high cap division. Aside from that back right move, you basically have targets in front of you the whole time, and potentially in something like a open or a limited major, you could be much more aggressive with moving backwards on this target if you didn't have the reload. But as a production stage plan, I was quite happy with that. And I think it worked out. 3 Charlies for the stage. I was pretty happy with that. That's about the level you want to be at. On a 28 round stage. I mean, steel, I feel like steel slants the numbers a little bit, but obviously there's no steel on this stage. Yeah, 23 Charlies, that's 95% of the available points. So yeah, that's about the high end of what you want to shoot for. Sometimes you'll get a little bit more than that, but yeah. Yeah, I agree. The covered port really changed the original design intent. It definitely did. As it was, I think it made it different. I don't think it necessarily made it bad. It made it so you sort of had to go to that one position, and so it kind of anchored you in a sense. It was sort of one of these positions that you're forced to go to. But yeah, I mean, originally that was just supposed to be a port that was open the whole time, and so you didn't even necessarily have to get that close to it. as it was, I think the stage was still okay. Probably would have been better with the port being open, but it was definitely an interesting. It's not something you see a ton as a prop, and so it kind of for a stage or for a match that was otherwise kind of light on movers or any kind of maybe we had a door in another stage, but otherwise I thought it was okay. Yeah. Unloaded start. Yeah, this one, I mean, went pretty much to plan, shot all the things from all the right spots. It was just the points ate me up. Because we were running quickly, I didn't actually even see where the delta was. I honestly don't know what target it was. But yeah, I mean, dropping 9 Charlies in a delta, so, call it 11 Charlies effectively on a 32-round stage, that was just, yeah, that was too much. And I mean that's reflected basically in my score. So the time was roughly competitive. The stage winner shot it in 1943. I shot it in 2049, so I was a second off the pace. But he shot it in that time with 3 Charlies. And the other thing, just for me, we don't see a lot of unloaded starts. It's not something I practice a lot, and so knowing that, sort of going into that, I really wanted it to get that, just to not fumble with it, not short stroke the slide. So I was happy that went well. And then obviously here, I'm taking that back target through the port because it saves me, so basically changes the round count. So this first mag is 6, and then this middle position, let's go to the first person on this one. Yeah, so this position ends up being 10. Yeah, okay, some Charlies on that guy, on those guys, that's, I mean, pretty much par for the course. You barely have any of the lower A zone there, but, that's definitely an area of improvement, at least trying to pick up one, maybe credit card alpha on the upper target there. But, so here, taking that target back there, it made this a mag of 8 instead of 10, and it didn't really seem like it seemed like a good sort of safe way to shift from shooting a mag of 6 and 8 instead of shooting 4 up front and then having a 2 mags of 10 back to back. Beaker asks, why transition to the poppers up front instead of the paper first? No real reason. I mean, you can be a little more aggressive. Coming, basically shoving the gun out there. I knew I had 3 extra rounds because I was only going to be shooting, I basically had 8 rounds in this position. And so I figured, with the kind of forest of poppers, I would just put the gun out there and start shooting. And, I kind of was aiming, my intended order was, front, left, front, right. Because the way they overlapped, the plan was I was hopefully going to be able to shoot front, left, front, right, and then actually get the back right before the front right was all the way down. As it was, I over transitioned and shot over the left shoulder of the back right popper. Here, let's slow it down, back it up a smidge. But yeah, the idea was like left, right, right, left, and just I ended up basically following up that plan, and then just having to come back and clean up that last popper. But probably would have been fine either way. If you did want to run it to the paper first. Yeah, I don't know that I really have a strong feeling about that. I mean, it was a slightly sort of off balance position trying to shoot the paper, and so if you can end on a position like that, so you get into it. If it's an awkward position, you get into it on the clock, but you don't have to get out of it on the clock. That's kind of nice. So if I was reloading and sort of had to get into that position and then transition over to the steel, maybe, but no, I mean, either is probably fine. Man, Yeah, stage 8. Yeah, that is darn impressive. 3 Charlies for the stage with, I mean, the most of the A zones, I mean, as long as you're getting the A's on the ones where you have the lower body available, that's not a big deal. But yeah, because all those were open. But yeah, the 3 Charlies, that is impressive. All right, we are almost done. Yeah. Yeah, so another stage where, not really a ton of options or sort of fancy stuff you can do. You can see I've definitely tried, as much as possible, sort of in each position, to sort of have the gun up, coming in, shooting. So in this first position, it's, shooting to 6. As it was, I don't know that it was originally designed for this other paper back here to be visible from this back right shooting position, but again, looking at it, it took the plan from being 6, 6, and 10 to being 6, 8, and 8. So just a little more room to breathe. It wasn't that much harder of a shot taking it from that position. You had to go there anyway, so I figured, yeah, why not? We'll make it 6, 8, and 8 to be a little bit easier. But ultimately, this was this was really just a test of fast, precise shooting. Can you sort of grip the gun hard and return the sights, and that's really going to determine your time. The movement, with the door and everything getting in your way, it's really not going to make a difference. Now, kind of like a Texas Star, if it goes bad, it goes really bad. But I think that really mostly only happened to people who tried to do something funky, like pushing the door when they moved and then hoping it would stay open, and just the way it was set up, it didn't. It swung back closed, not fast, but if you hit it right at the start, by the time you got back to it to go forward to the last position, it would be closed again. So I was like, nah, don't worry about it. Just leave the door when it's time to go through it. Just go through it. And then, I mean, you can see here, I'm kind of pausing and confirming on every shot. Ideally, working on grip and returning the sights and doubles drill and all that would help, and sort of it would just be a matter of working through those targets more, with sort of saving 5/100ths, or a tenth on each target, sort of recovering the gun, having it come straight back down, not having to reconfirm as much. But ultimately, the times were all pretty much bunched up. Again, everybody had to go to every spot and shoot pretty much the same targets. So I shot it in 17.5. There were a couple of runs in 16.5. Surprisingly, with not necessarily great points. The stage winner shot it 4 Charlies and a Delta in 17.2. I shot it 9 Charlies in 17.5. So, it was basically more about points than necessarily the speed. You could go a lot faster, but it appears that the people that really pushed that speed picked up a lot of points. And so, this is, again, one of those stages where there's just not that much really interesting special stuff you can do as a shooter. There aren't that many interesting choices or aggressive trade-offs you can make. And so it's how quickly can you recover the gun, move it between the targets, and knock out the A zones. But overall, I think it is certainly a fair test of skill. I think, the best shooters certainly came out ahead. But, when you see a stage like this as a shooter, I mean, there's something to be said for just saying, okay, like there's not that much sort of fancy magic that I can do. Um, I did, especially coming into this reload, coming across, the goal was get the gun reloaded first and have it up, so I'm shooting that target as I'm coming in. That worked. It was great. I think I dropped a Charlie on that target just because I was, on the move and didn't really have my grip established. So, gave up some points there. But that was really the only kind of cool guy thing you could do here. You couldn't cut a position. You basically had to go to all three spots just to be able to see everything. And so you just kind of don't overthink it. Relax and focus on the execution. Relax on really getting a solid grip on the gun, moving, especially on a kind of awkward half backward move like this, where your draw is going to be a little bit fudged up from, not drawing from hands and sides. Just make sure you get a good strong grip on the gun and then go to town. Yeah, I tried shooting that guy coming in. Didn't really save me anything because I had to shoot a makeup. Would have been better just letting the sight settle, but it didn't really cost me anything either. If I'd called a good shot, I could have moved on, but... So, that was the match. Yeah, 9 stages. I thought they were, on the whole, pretty good. Like I said, with after the sort of 3 stages at the beginning where I was just not, my head wasn't in it. I wasn't putting in the work to kind of visualize and really program things in. Because after that, I think this 85% was my lowest percentage finish. After that, it was all 85s, low 90s, which, that's a fine way to do things. You like I said, you really don't need, you do not win matches by winning stages. And so I've never have and never will really be trying to, knock it out of the park winning stages. But if I could, I haven't done the math or anything, but, if I could go back and have the average of my, stages 1, 2, and 3 be 90% instead of 80% runs, that would have been much more competitive. And so it's interesting to see within a match like this, sort of the turnaround, from the first couple of stages where my head wasn't in it to, all right, it's go time. Like, this is the state match. Like, yes, you're on staff, but take it seriously. And I'm pretty happy with how it went. When I wrapped up the match, I was feeling like, okay, like this is a good, I'm in a good place. I can get this into good shape and be ready to go for nationals. As it is, I've basically looked at the calendar and just looking at sort of the way nationals has been the last 2 years, and I've just not. I realized I wasn't looking forward to going. It wasn't something that was motivating to me. It was something I was just kind of, I felt like I had to force myself to do, and so I'm not going to do it. The match, who knows, maybe it'll be better this year with the staff package and everything, but I just decided. They announced, we actually heard from the Area 6 director who came and shot this match. He actually told us what had sort of been a rumor for a while, which is that the Area 6 match will actually be at this club, Rowan County, in the spring. So I believe April 10th? Look it up. It's on the website. But so I just kind of said, okay, like, yeah, I'm not going to national. I don't want to go to nationals. And there's some other personal stuff going on. I just started a new job and other things that are in the works, and so it's a lot of personal resources to sort of commit to go to a nationals that honestly is consistently underwhelming. Whereas hopefully, this club, after they put on what I think was a good example of a state championship, competitors did not have to pace or reset the whole time. They could just focus on the shooting, cold water on all the bays, the prize table. You got to walk the prize table when you checked in. I'll do a podcast on all this stuff at some point soon, hopefully. But yeah, this is a good match, and Area 6 is going to be right in my backyard. So I'm sort of looking at this as the end of my 2020 season. But at the same time, I'm basically going straight into training pretty much as I can while the weather's good. Hopefully it's a decent fall, and we've got some decent weather, at least until, say, daylight savings time flips over. And so I can get some training in and then dry fire, dry fire through the winter and, you know, come out ready to do well at Area 6, which I don't think I'll be working. I haven't seen the staff package or anything announced yet, but it seems like from what I'm hearing, I probably will not be working that, and just really setting out to do my best there and you know, see what I can do in terms of how I stack up within the section. So, or not the section, within the area. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. That's kind of the next milestone now that kind of nationals is off the table for me. And yeah, hopefully, you know, anybody that's watching this, Area 6, coming to North Carolina. It's it's right near Charlotte. I imagine that's the airport you would fly into if you're flying. Ton of stuff to do in Charlotte. So yeah, come shoot with us if you can. And if not, that's all I've got for tonight. I'll hang out for a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions. But otherwise, I know this has been obviously 10 stages. It's longer than your average club match, more to talk about than your average club match. But hopefully this has been interesting, helpful to everyone out there. Interesting. A couple of people are like just now joining the stream. Unfortunately, I have to go back and watch the replay. But alrighty, folks. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll do this again soon. I'm shooting the Sir Walter club match this Saturday, so 2 days from now. And so we'll have another one of these soon. And until then, if you have anything, email me, ben@berryshooting.com, or Facebook Messenger, and that'll get to me, and let's talk. You seem generally upright as you shoot. What does that mean? Like I'm not leaning? Yeah, I mean getting lower. Yeah. So the question is, would getting lower be an advantage? Yes, almost always for leaving positions more aggressively. So like having a sort of straight-legged stance like this is not good. But you can see I'm trying to keep sort of bend in my knees and sort of stay, not set up too narrow or too upright. So, my feet aren't spaced that wide apart here, and I don't know if you can really see it from the camera angle, but I have a decent, my knees are decently bent, and that's really what helps you when it's time to push out of a position. Just do, wow, actually that was, I hadn't looked at that particular movement, but that's, for me, more or less as good as it gets these days. I have a really bad habit of doing like these little tiny like micro drop steps where I'll like pick up the foot, move it 2 inches, and then put it back down again to push off. And so my goal is always just turn my hips in the direction I want to go, and then just push straight out. Let's see if I do it on the other side. But yeah, so my feet aren't super wide apart, but you can see I got a decent amount of knee bend. Definitely trying to stay low there. Watch my feet on this one. Yeah, so just push straight out of the position. Trying to think where else kind of pushing out of position would be relevant. This one's probably a good one to review that on. Yeah, so knees somewhat bent, feet fairly close together. But then, yeah, just lean forward. Don't sort of drop step back. But you can see I'm sort of keeping that bend in my knees, trying to stay low, moving through. Definitely stand up a little bit to get that lean, but it's trying to get a little bit of extra leverage, trying to get around that barrel. But yeah, stay low. Yeah, there you go. There's a little baby drop step for you. I'm terrible about that. But then yeah, just keeping those bent knees. And I think I post up here a little bit just because I know I'm not leaving. I shouldn't, but I do sometimes. Alrighty. I'm going to call it there. Thanks everybody for showing up. And like I said, hopefully this is helpful.